I will do that again. At the
Oh,
beginning of anything, we should record. Sorry.
for me being like camera on or off.
I mean, I prefer camera on, but I prefer more than that that you are comfortable. Um, I really enjoy feedback because when I can see how people are experiencing information, I can tailor it. Because otherwise, just meditation can get very esoteric very quickly. And so when you can start to see like glazing eyes and blank faces, you're like, all right, bring it back. So,
Right.
but the most important thing is for you to put yourself in a position to learn. So whatever that means for you, go for it. Cool.
Hmm.
Let's do it. All right. Thanks for showing up today, guys. Appreciate it. My intention is to, number one, share this with the people who are here live, but I know that there's a lot of people who will be watching these recordings later. So my intention in sharing this course, um, which whose curriculum is not set, like I have a plan, but the most important thing is to be together, and to tailor it to whoever's showing up. But my hope is to leave something that will help a lot of people. I think that if I was to say one of the most, there's two things that are incredibly precious in my life, and perhaps more precious than kind of anything. Um, One would be meditation, and the other is vowed morality. To know what a set of ethical, what it means to have a like a code of ethics, a code of conduct that you really believe in, and to like 100% commit to that. Because I've seen the reason these two things are so precious is because I've seen this very clearly be the bedrock and the foundation for so much of the good things in my life, and it helps me keep the good things in my life and to work through the difficult things in a way that's graceful and intentional. And I don't think I'd have appreciation for any of the things that I appreciate now to the degree in which I do appreciate them if I didn't have the practice of meditation. So I'm very, very, very honored and excited to be sharing how to meditate with you guys because I think it's a good life when we share things that are meaningful with others. Hello, Verena. Hi, LJ. Hi, Sophia. Thanks for coming.
Hey,
All right. So, uh, with no further ado, let's go ahead and get started with the content of today. All right. So this is a series called How to Meditate. This is class one. Like I said, we'll tailor these classes to whatever the needs are of the people. But I do have a bit of a curriculum to start with. And yeah, so let's start by describing. I know it's early in the morning for some of you, so feel free to stay quiet or chat in, but feel free to unmute. Describe what it's like to be in like your favorite state of mind. Like, what's that like?
I'd say it feels like everything's kind of like flowing very peacefully, but also like very not like peaceful in a passive way, like just like a powerful sense of like peace and presence and intention.
Nice. Flow, intention, peace, presence.
There's like a certain warmth to it, pace as well.
Warmth. Nice. Cool.
I think, like, kind of going off of what you were saying about vow morality, I think my favorite state of mind is when it's connected to like rejoicing or something, some kind of gratitude.
Nice. Yeah, I love that, Becky. Go ahead, Sophie. All right, cool.
I mean, everything was mentioned, so I feel like, yeah, just like a peace, love. So it's a little hard for me to describe it at the moment.
No, that was perfect. Thank you. Verena, not to put you on the spot, but if you wanted to, then everybody would have unmuted. I learned that if you get people to interact within the first 10 minutes of a course, it changes the culture of the entire course. So that's why I'm putting everybody on the spot here to create a culture of interactivity.
I tried. My English is not so good. I think it's a warmth and soft and connectedness.
Connectedness, that's a nice one. Good and soft. I
Mhm.
like that. Awesome. Well, thanks for sharing.
Quietness, maybe.
Ooh, quietness. So, what's really interesting about what everybody has shared is that the descriptions that you've just offered as your favorite states of mind is how you might describe a state of meditation. I think that's kind of fascinating. You know, the first time that I really started to kind of have it click, because in the beginning it's like walking with or dancing with two left feet. You know, it's very uncomfortable or unfamiliar. But once I started really kind of getting into the rhythm, it started feeling like all of my favorite states of mind. For me, I really love flow state. I'm an athlete. I'm a creator. You know, I love to perform. Whether I was performing on stage, playing music, or performing in a sport, or teaching. It's just a really amazing, clear mind, very awake, very responsive, totally in the present, and just it feels like there's no friction. And I remember I was talking with somebody who was a mountain climber, super hardcore, like very, very talented mountain climber. And he would do things that are life-threatening all the time, which put him in a state of flow. You know, that level of risk and intensity makes you so grounded in the present moment. And his teacher, who's a great teacher, he said, you need to stop. And these two individuals, the student and the teacher, had a very profound and intimate relationship, like high confidence, high connection. And he said, you need to stop doing your mountain climbing because you could die. Like really, it's just not worth the risk because you have so much to accomplish still. And he's like, but I feel so alive and I love to do it. And he goes, listen, whatever you've felt mountain climbing is just a fraction of what you can feel in a state of profound meditation. And it will pale in comparison. And I was like, what? Because I grew up doing extreme sports. Like I would like some of the most intense thing that I would love to do is I bomb mountains on a longboard at like 45 miles an hour, and you just, I mean it's life or death if you do the wrong thing, but it's just like so awake. But it's true that the state of exhilaration with incredible stability that comes out of a good meditation makes mountain climbing or bombing a mountain on a longboard, it makes us look really tame, you know? And so, and the other word that I love when I think of meditation is creative. For me, creativity is a really highly valued attribute. And I feel when you're in a state of good meditation, creativity becomes effortless. and profound, like thinking of things you've never thought of before. Good. So, thanks for the exercise. We're going to be talking about how to cultivate all of those attitudes for really cool purposes. All those kind of states of mind for really, really high purposes. But first, as you know, I have to talk about sources because it's important to understand our teachers and also to know what schools I'm teaching from, because what you'll hear here will likely be different than what you hear in other places. And it's not that those are wrong necessarily, but it's good to know. So there's going to be three main sources that we're going to be pulling from for this class, and then lots of others that we'll pull in. But the main ones include the Yoga Sutra of Master Patanjali, around 200 Common Era. That was his dates. The Great Book on the steps, oops, that should be plural, to Enlightenment by Jetsun Kappa, 1357 to 1419. And Steps of Meditation by Kamalashila, 740 to 795. And this is Jetsun Kappa here. Um, so, uh, so those are going to be our sources. All right, we're going to start with a definition. What is the definition of meditation? We just talked about an experience of meditation, um, but very, very simply, and there's many definitions of meditation, but I really love this one. It's extremely simple. Meditation is habituation of the mind. Meditation is habituation of the mind or familiarization of the mind. To familiarize the mind to a thing. So we're not talking yet about what thing or how or any of those things. It's just simply one of the ways that I've heard it said nicely is like searing an image into your mind, like shh. And so I use this drop of dew because there's some really beautiful analogies of the mind is clear, like a drop of water, but then when that drop of water is put onto an object, like a petal of a flower, then it takes on the qualities of that object. And so I think we can see this really easily in our lives. Like if we know somebody who's always worrying and worrying and worrying and worrying, their mind becomes full of worry, right? The mind is habituating on worry, the quality of worry. Then we can think of somebody who maybe is like a mother or a grandmother or motherly, someone who is just really loving. And their mind becomes a place that's full of unconditional love. Like there's someone in my mom, and my joke with my mom is that if a rock needed a place to stay and a roof over his head, she'd give it to him. Because she's just constantly living a life of love. And so her mind is habituated to that quality of love. And so think about any time that you've tried to learn a skill or any time that you've really tried to intentionally cultivate your mind, you can see how your mind takes on that quality. I remember in middle school, I was watching way too many horror movies. And it was like one snow day, and I just watched too many in one day, and my mind became a horror movie. It was really, really unpleasant. And that was the last day I watched a horror movie. I have literally not watched horror movies since that day in middle school, eighth grade, because I just really saw how it changed the quality of my mind. Even though I didn't want that to be, it just became that way. And so when we think about cause and effect and seeds, etc., which is not necessarily what we're going to get into in this course, but we can kind of see how that makes sense. So meditation is habituation of the mind, whether we're aware of it or not, whether it's intentional or not. That is meditation. So now we're going to go through a couple more formal definitions. And as you know, I love my Sanskrit. LJ is like LJ's like, oh yeah, here we go. All right, so second chapter, second verse of the Yoga Sutra. I think this is a really beautiful definition. It's not even a definition, it's more like, why do we meditate? What is the purpose of meditation? Samadhi bhavanartha, klesha tanu karanartascha, sorry. The purpose of meditation is to make the negative emotions dwindle away. I really love that. Dwindle away. Like the dwindle comes in tanu. So tanu it means to like attenuate something. It's like to draw out honey, until it becomes like very thin or something. And so it's like dwindling away as you're drawing it out. Or if you take a vaccine, those like viruses are attenuated, meaning they become weak, so your body can learn them. And so when the reason we meditate is to make the negative emotions dwindle away, which is ironic because when you begin meditating for maybe the first time, you actually increase your negative emotions because you realize how much of a wreck your mind is. Because for the first time, you're trying to watch it all day. And you're like, oh my gosh, my mind is a dumpster fire. And then you're like, uh-oh, this is bad news. I like kind of prefer to be ignorant. Okay, so actually, you often increase your unhappiness in the very beginning. It's like taking an antibiotic, where it's like, now that you've taken the medicine, the now you have to purify everything that's been cleaned out, and then you get into a really nice stride. Okay. Um, can you, by the way, you might hear my daughter. She helps me meditate. I think she's going down for a nap right now and is not very excited about that. So please excuse that. Okay. Then chapter 3 of the Yoga Sutra, for me, is this incredibly elegant sequence of the definition of meditation. And so they have three different kinds of meditation. If you're familiar with Ashtanga in yoga, the eight-limb method of yoga, these are the last three limbs of yoga. Desha, Bandhash, Chittasya, Dharana. This is so cool. Locking the mind on an object is focus. So dharana is the first level of meditation. And so we do this all day long. It's just when the mind meets an object, mind and object connect. So it's like, oh, lunch, boom, you just meditated. Oh, look at that screen, meditation. Uh, oh, look, someone just called me, meditation. That is, you just focused the mind on an object. So that's the very, very, very beginning. Again, how intentional is that? And that's one of the muscles that we develop in meditation is to become intentional about what objects we're locking our mind on. It's like you're walking through the streets of New York and you're seeing all these extremely sexy advertisements everywhere, and you're just totally being distracted. Now you step into the street in the way of traffic because your mind unintentionally is locking itself on objects all around us that aren't necessarily helpful. Okay? So that's the first level. And then the second level, this is the second verse of the third chapter. Tatra pratyayika tanata dhyanam. Staying on that object over a stretch of time is fixation. This is really beautiful. So dhyanam, this translator translated as fixation. Now, this is where it becomes extremely difficult to do this intentionally, but you'll find this when you're working on a presentation that you're just locked in on, or when you're playing a sport and you're totally you're fixed on that sport. On the sport. So the first is you focus on it, and then the second is to line up the focuses so that you have duration of focus, and that's fixation. That's dhyana. And so if you have an asana practice, in the very beginning, at least for me, especially if I'm not feeling like I want to do my practice, I'm constantly just negotiating. I'm just like, maybe I'll just do my sun salutations today and that'll be my practice, Or like, Or like, maybe I'll just do a little bit and then just do a bunch of pranayama because I don't feel like doing this. And so like my focus is jumping over like what I want to do and then like me trying to get out of what I'm doing. But then once you start to flow, now you're just in. You're just in the flow. You're fixed. And so it's a lot easier when we have an external object to interact with, like a concert or a book, and you're just page turning, and you're just whoa, or like you're totally fixed. And I hope that my intention in sharing all these analogies is that um, it's really important when we have these states of mind. By recalling the states of mind, we can bring them back into the present. So when we're going to do the very difficult work of meditation without external object, it's way more difficult to stay focused and fixed on our focus. So if we can try to remember and recall that previous state of mind that had the qualities that we want, then it's much easier for us to then have those qualities become present again. And so it's like I love action movies because I just drop into Dhyanam like instantly. You're like, and you start to drool, you're hardly even breathing because it's just so intense. And so I'm like, I want to cultivate that attitude in this moment. I want to cultivate that state of mind in this moment. Okay. And this is going to come up over and over and over and over and over again, a little bit later in these classes. Okay. And then to me, this is probably one of those elegant things I've ever read, period. And like to the point where I like have an emotional experience about it. It's so gorgeous. This is the definition of samadhi, which is the highest level of meditation. So we focused, then we fixated, and then now we're in perfect meditation. So this is the highest evolution of a concentrated mind. And it's extremely exquisite because it's very difficult to accurately define samadhi in just a few syllables. But here it is. Tadevarta matra nirbasam. Swarupa, Swarupa Shunyam Eva Samadhi. So gorgeous. Tade Vartamatra Nirbasam Swarupa Shunyam Eva Samadhi. Perfect meditation then sees this same object as its simple self, as its true nature. And you might remember this word Swarupa from the third verse of the Yoga Sutra. So it's when we see the truth of the thing that we're taking into our meditation. And what is that truth? It's its clear light, which is that it's totally void of any nature of its own. And that's samadhi. That's the highest level. It's when we've taken an object, put our focus on it. We've fixated on that object with such incredible intensity that the piercing quality of our concentration has then moved away like a laser, ablating, just like destroying everything that it isn't, to finally have a true direct perception of reality. And then we realize the nature of reality in that moment after everything that it isn't has gone away. And then we could never be confused again about how things are. We never get caught in an illusion because we know the ultimate nature of things. Okay, super super deep. But that's where we're headed. If that was a bunch of gobbledygook that you didn't understand, don't worry about it. It takes, it's really beautiful and it's kind of why we're here. So, if you're ever confused, that means you're in the right place. Because if you understood everything that I was saying, then you're wasting your time because you have nothing to learn. So what I wanted to do now is hit pause for a second and try to just roll through these three states. All right, so focus on something. And we're going to use something really easy and obvious to begin. So I'm going to offer you three options of what to meditate on. The first is, and you can choose a fourth. The first is your breath. The second is the beating of your heart. And the third is some kind of physical sensation. So whether it's your shirt on your chest or your belly or something like that, or your bottom on a seat, we're going to try to rock through these three to just try to catch what Patanjali was writing about in the Yoga Sutra. Okay, and then we'll come back. We're just gonna do a little 10-minute meditation here. Okay. So, get into a nice position. We relax to meditate. We meditate to relax. Okay. Get into a still position and then don't move. Even if you have an itch, even if you're a little uncomfortable, don't move an inch. Unless you're in genuine injurious pain, then do something about it. Otherwise, stay still. All right, choose your object. The beating of your heart, the sensation of breath, the sensation of touch with your shirt or something tactile, or whatever you'd like. And try to catch the feeling of the mind locking onto the object, like you're snapping two puzzle pieces together, or you're catching a ball in your hand. Okay, now get off the object. Take another object. Now bring your mind back to the first object. Feel it lock. Okay, choose a different object. Unlock. Lock back in. Jump on the first object. Okay, and 3 more times. Get off the object, then get back on the object intentionally. And really pay attention to the feeling of placing your mind on an object intentionally. Okay, so I'll stay silent for 10 breaths, and then you jump on and off. Okay, stay with your eyes closed, stay still. And now we're going to go from focus to fixation. So this time, we're not going to intentionally jump off and on. We're going to just stay on the object that you chose. So set the intention to stay on the object, so that every single moment of consciousness is the same object in a continuous stream. Do it for 10 breaths. If your mind has wandered back, sorry, if your mind has wandered away, bring it back. Staying in meditation, we'll go to the next level. This same object that we've now focused our concentration on. What is its true nature? Ask that question and try to find it. Is it a thing out there which I can find? to even talk about objects, we have to realize that there must be a subject to perceive the object. The I, which perceives the it. And so now we'll take the subject as the object. If we go looking for I, will we actually be able to find it? I am a collection of ideas. Bob is a past tied up into a package called I. The one who puts that package together is me. The package does not exist independently of me putting it together. So, I does exist, but in name only. So, what is I before I've labeled it? Relax the mind and allow your consciousness to expand. By removing the label of I. Is this raw consciousness even a self-existing thing? Where did it come from? Consciousness is a result. That's why I can experience it. So then it must have a cause. But even causes and results are created things. They are temporary and fleeting. So, what is the thing that is permanent? What is the thing before a thing? It is the lack of anything. The negative space upon which consciousness can be posited onto. It is the essence of the essence. It is the ultimate reality, upon which everything else is elaboration. And then when you're ready, you can begin to deepen your exhales. And take a stretch. All right, what was your experience like? Feel free to stay in it as long as you like, by the way. Do we feel like we could connect in some way to the different ideas? Don't be shy. We're friends.
I would say for me, like a little bit, I think I've been out of my seated practice in like a very habituated way. And so I felt like inklings of being able to kind of like feel connected to some of those ideas and then would find my mind kind of, you know, drifting onto something else. And then I'd kind of realize and bring it back. But it feels really good to kind of, have intention to kind of re-engage with my seated practice. So feeling gratitude for that.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing, LJ. By the way, dopamine hack for that is when you've woken up and realized that you were mind wandering, celebrate. Like give yourself a positive reinforcement because then your brain becomes trained to enjoy remembering. And so then it's more likely to stay in that state because it has a dopamine feedback system. A lot of times people will be like, "Oh my gosh, I suck." I was just off the object. But do the opposite. Oh, I'm awesome. I just realized that I was off of my intention. Way to wake up. Way to come back. Good job. All right, here we are. So thanks for sharing that, LJ. Jake?
These ideas are big and confusing to me,
Okay.
honest. Um, so it was a really interesting experience. I like love the challenge of trying to think like I notice breath, but I don't notice myself noticing breath. That's like that analogy that you used of the puzzle piece. I'm like, there's a cognitive level to that that I'm interested in continuing to explore because I feel myself able to bring that rise to the challenge when you were talking about the focus and feel the attenuating moment.
Mm.
So of course there's a lifetimes of training that go into attenuating more effectively, but like being able to feel that. Um, but still, yeah, on the idea of emptiness as well, like pretty mind blowing. I don't think I even realized it until you brought us back and I like felt my hand and it was like I didn't like I just was like didn't realize how elsewhere I think I was through the course of that exercise.
Now, when you say elsewhere, do you mean mind wandering or like expansive consciousness not limited by form?
Expansive consciousness, not limited by form. Form
Okay.
gone through that like uh to that degree. um so
So tell me about the quality of your concentration in your experience of that. Like being meta aware. So it's like the experience of it, and then there's an awareness of the quality of the mind which is experiencing. Do you know what I mean?
yes.
Where like simple words, I just said a bunch of complicated words is I felt good. Or I felt still, you know.
I think that like I'm from a metacognitive standpoint aware that there's an exercise going on, which is even like there's so much practice to be done here. Like I'm humble to how early I am in this. Um, the I like love I naturally kind of do the celebratory moment, so that definitely spoke to me. Like there's like this thing where it's like, oh, all of a sudden, like if my back, you know,
Yeah.
feel it in my back for a second, and it's like, oh, cool, my attention is brought to my back, and I can bring it right back up to uh the breath and the idea of like focus. I like really enjoyed there's so much like I guess the word would be texture like that exercise of bringing the because I focused on my breath like bringing it away from the breath and then back to it all of a sudden it was like I was still aware I was breathing when I focused on the fact that my feet were planted on the ground. And honestly I've spent my entire practice generally has been focused around breath and my ability to like create a rich tapestry of like my experience breathing as opposed to like when I really think hard about the fact that I'm sitting, I realize how little I can actually understand about being seated. Like and how little I am feeling to a certain degree. Like I can like and so I appreciated that the contrast of that in the exercise.
Rich sharing. Thank you, Jake.
Trying my best.
Appreciate it. All right, who else would like to share?
I will.
Yeah, go ahead.
So normally I get very distracted when I'm trying to contemplate something during a practice, but I felt like because you were like helping us train our mind first to focus and then fixate, then it was really easy for me to stay with the prompts that you were saying. So that was really cool. And I noticed something weird. I chose my heartbeat and then I chose the breath at the tip of the nose. And I noticed that my eyes were moving. Every time I switched, my eyes would go down to my heart and then they would go up to my nose. That was kind of weird. I want to learn how to just like not physically react to what my mind is following.
Well, thanks for sharing that, Becky. And I want to highlight the idea of meditation as a skill with technique. So the technique of focus. How do we focus? Like, and really getting familiar with that. It's like if you were to like learn the different ways to cut a vegetable, there's like you dice, you mince, you you do all these different there's all these techniques, but we're all cooking, right? So we're meditating. But what are the techniques and the skills required to meditate? So focus is a skill. Feeling that locking in, and then fixating is a skill. You're like, okay, I'm super familiar with this now. I know what that's like. I can conjure it. I really appreciated that. And then Becky, this will come much later, but you can use your eyes to wake the mind up by looking up if you're feeling dull, or if you're feeling agitated, you can bring your eyes down to calm the mind out of agitation into stillness. So you can actually use the eyes closed in a very nuanced, subtle way that makes a really big difference, uh, especially when you're like doing longer meditations. Cool. Which all that's coming. This is the first class, but and Jake, don't worry about emptiness. My habit is I got to give it to you all as soon as we can in case like any of us dies. At least you got it. And then we can work through methodically after that. Sophie, I'd love to hear about your experience if you're willing to share.
Yes. So for me, the first part was much easier to concentrate and like switch the objects. Then when I need to stay more focused on one object, that's where I notice myself uh, switching, like my mind would switch to something else, to the breathing, and then go back to the object. So that was the harder part. And by the end of it, I think the sitting was also the hard part for me. I started thinking of getting off of it. Which physically I feel like I do work on my body, but it's just like everything started, I feel uncomfortable for some reason. And yeah, that was my thought by the end of it.
Cool. Thank you for sharing. And that's exactly why I started doing yoga, Sophie, is because sitting was so massively uncomfortable that
For me, funny
I
part,
had to.
yeah. I mean, I'm doing yoga that the most, right? From all of
Mhm.
it. And it's still not that comfortable.
Yeah, and
So especially today, I feel extra sore. So I'm like, okay, I need to just stretch. So the stretching part was the best at the end of it. But yeah.
yeah, I love that. Good. Yeah, and you'll start to modify your asana to help your body in meditation. Now if you start to you're like, oh, I need to work on this, and then and you can start to use that to condition the body for sitting. And for easily 4 years, I don't know, I think I say different years every time I say this, but between 3 and 4 years, I meditated in a chair. Like sitting on a cushion was an impossibility for me. And and now I can meditate in a chair like a boss, like and so I'm really glad that I like developed that skill. So don't think that you're doing it wrong by sitting in a chair or something. Like it's perfect. The point is concentration. It's not looking pretty. Uh, Verena, are you willing to share? No pressure.
Yeah, I think it was yeah, for me was a new idea to switch the objects and to set the intention to get back. Uh, I thought it was yeah a very good practice. And the moment you said then stay on the object, I felt like tension in the body. Oh no. Um, now it gets yeah difficult.
Yep, I totally understand. I very much understand. That's a good reason to be here, by the way. Cool. Well, thank you guys so much for sharing. Um, I think that a really beautiful attitude around sharing is that you don't share for yourself. You share for the sake of everyone else here. Right? So if you're nervous about, well, I don't know if I want to, it's not about you. Because like there's only so much that I can say, but we know from going to conferences or from having other experiences, like so much comes out of hearing other people's experiences. So when you share, think about it as a kindness to everybody else. And so if you're feeling nervous or something like that, just don't worry about it. Um, and our whole goal here is to become nice people. So you're probably in the best company possible to share vulnerably. All right. We're not all like in a finance company trying to get the promotion. Like it's all good. Cool. So let's end that there today. I'm not gonna lie, I did not intend on going that heavy at the end, but old habits die hard. So as soon as we started going in, I was like, oh man, let's go. Um, and it's good to like get a little scope. So, I did intend for that to be a 10-minute, but once we were in it, I was like, I felt like we should keep going. Because this is recorded. So one of the nice things about it is you can go back and listen to this again, if you'd like to. So homework. Your homework this week is to work on the skill of focusing the mind intentionally. Okay. Because when we wake up out of mind wandering, or when we wake up out of distraction, or we wake up out of dullness, and we come back onto our object, the more familiar we are with that skill of intentionally locking the mind on an object, then the more effortless it becomes. So if it's like, oh, I know how to do this, boom, back on. So really, you can even do it where you say, for 2 breaths, I'm on the object. For 2 breaths, I'm, I'm relaxed and I'm gonna go somewhere else. 2 breaths on the object, 2 breaths off. 1 breath on, 1 breath off. Inhale on, exhale off. So you get to play with it, for wherever you're at. Just try to do whatever feels like, you're winning. Okay, so that's your meditation assignment for the week, is to just become familiar with the first level of focusing intentionally on the object. And by the way, to make this meta applicable, when we are going through our life, it is very easy to forget our intention. When we're going through our workday, it's very easy to get distracted by things that aren't critical. Oh, I gotta answer that email. Do you? And so if you're letting your mind just jump around wherever sensation is occurring without intention, then your ability to live fearlessly on purpose, which is Spiritual Warrior's tagline, be on purpose. Don't get off purpose. Like, what is your purpose right now? Okay, we need to develop our concentration. So learning how to realize that we're off the object and jump back on the object helps in our relationships, helps in our life purpose, in our mission, and obviously in our meditation. So it's a very, very, very applicable skill of mind training that we're developing here. Not just useful for working on our heart, but kicking ass at work too. All right, guys. I'll see you next week. Do your homework, and I'm here throughout the week. Drop me a line. Thank you.
Thanks, Bob.
Peace out, y'all.
Peace.